making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
I only eat popcorn at the movies.
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
Halloween. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters?
Yeah.
What's yours?
Guess.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
On Christmas Day, 1996, a movie was shown on theater screens across the country. This movie would forever change the face of horror. The movie I'm talking about, of course, is Scream, written by newcomer Kevin Williamson and veteran horror director Wes Craven. The reason I want to talk about this is because I don't think a lot of people understand just how monumental Scream was as a movie. Now, before this, we need to go back a few years to the late 80s and early 90s. See, in the 80s, there was just an onslaught of horror. You had a ton of it coming out of Hollywood. You also had a lot of independent horror being made, and I'd say probably 70% of it was awesome, with the rest being very lackluster. All that said, by the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, you had basically a drought suddenly coming out of Hollywood, because what had been quality was suddenly starting to dip in quality, and as a result, people weren't putting their money down to go see these new movies that were coming out. Once profitable franchises like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street were kind of going the way of the dodo, becoming extinct. So as a result, 1996 comes along, Scream comes up, and it's like, okay, what did we just see? This is amazing. This movie is a smart horror movie that's got elements of thrillers, and it's got comedy. Something that, in my opinion, I feel like every horror movie needs at least a little bit of comic relief, because you need to laugh in between those scary moments. The reason this was so important, though, was the movie was not just a hit, but it was a huge hit. We already know, of course, that it spawned sequels, but the sequels kind of became cliches of the original because all they did was rehash the same material.
Are you suggesting that someone's trying to make a real-life sequel?
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
No, come on, man.
Oh, please. By definition alone, they're inferior films. It's bullshit.
Now, granted, that's not to say that they don't have their fans and that there isn't some great work going on there. I mean, why else would I own them if I didn't enjoy them to some degree? But really and truthfully, all they are is cliches of the original. Now, if you're looking to blame someone for why Scream started to become a cliche, you might as well look at the writer Kevin Williamson himself. It may seem like I'm coming down a little hard on Williamson, but you need to understand something. Scream had a slew of imitators after the film came out. You had movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer. You had movies like Urban Legend. You had Cry Wolf. You had Bride of Chucky. You had Halloween H2O, The Faculty, Disturbing Behavior, and Valentine. Now, what's interesting is all of these movies were made by different studios. So you had things like Valentine, which I believe was made by Columbia, and then you had Cry Wolf and Bride of Chucky that were made by Universal, and then you had movies like Disturbing Behavior that was made by MGM, and then you've got what I like to call the Williamson movies. Now, this is what I meant. Kevin Williamson himself sort of started the trend of movies that imitate Scream. He wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer. He wrote The Faculty. He wrote a draft of Scream 3. He wrote a draft of Halloween H2O. So he's not exactly innocent in regards to the commercialization, or the further commercialization, maybe I should say, of his own property. Now, Scream 4 is an interesting film, and we'll get to that in a little bit later. But I want to bring it up because unlike these films that were becoming cliched because they were kind of sticking to the Scream mold and the Scream formula that worked so well and was so marketable, Scream 4 did something a little bit different. It, in a way, reinvented horror movies yet again for a new generation. But again, I'll explain that in a minute. The way that the first Scream reinvented horror movies was it kind of showed how horror movies needed to be marketed to their target audience. If you look at the posters for all of these films, each one basically looks like it could be a Scream sequel. You see what I mean? Okay, so then on top of that, you have recurring cast members that, while not part of Scream necessarily, you see Jackson from Dawson's Creek shows up in Urban Legend and Scream 2. Then you've got Sarah Michelle Gellar, who's in both I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream 2. You got Michelle Williams from Dawson's Creek showing up in Halloween H2O. You got Josh Hartnett showing up in The Faculty and Halloween H2O. Now granted, I get it. It was young Hollywood. This was who was available at the time. They were up-and-coming stars. However, but when you take the fact that they have already been in something that's something of a Scream clone without actually being a Scream clone, because I'm not saying these movies are carbon copies, they just have similar formulas. But when you take someone who's in a movie that's very similar to Scream, and then you put him in another movie that's very similar to Scream, it's like saying, hey, this guy was in this guy was in this, these posters look a lot like Scream, why don't you come see our movie? It's just as good, even though many times they weren't. Movies like Bride of Chucky and, of course, Cry Wolf, they're kind of embarrassing to watch. I'm not saying if you're a Chucky fan or a fan of Cry Wolf that you have the wrong opinion. I'm just saying that it's not my opinion. And of course, we all know everyone's got an opinion.
Nile ain't just a river in Italy, bud.
But the reason I want to bring this up is, with all of these imitators, we then get back to Kevin Williamson, who basically was like, sure, I'll write your movie, and they can put his name on it, and suddenly these movies that are not Scream but kind of look like Scream, say, from the producer of Scream or from the writer of Scream. You see where I'm coming from? So, this movie not only changed horror, but it changed it for like the next 10 to 15 years. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the newest forms of horror in found footage and, of course, torture porn, such as Saw and Hostel. Now, personally, I enjoy movies like Hostel, movies like Saw, but I don't enjoy them like I enjoy a movie like Scream. And then on top of that, you've got movies like found footage, which I just can't stand at all. I hate the found footage genre. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up, though, is that this brings us back to Scream 4. Scream 4 is, without a doubt, one of the best sequels to ever come out. And the reason I'm saying this is because the whole idea of playing with the convention of reboots and remakes within a sequel is brilliant. Not only is it brilliant, but it was done very effectively. You've got a whole new group of kids that in many ways mirror characters from the first movie. Now, on top of mirroring these characters from the first movie and bringing up the whole idea of the rules again, they set up the rules that had become the new cliche. If Scream 2 and 3 had become cliches of Scream 1, this movie has the potential to become the thing that sets up the new cliches in horror films, which we've already seen. As a result, that is just one of the best things to come out of the Scream franchise. And I personally think that Scream 4 is as good as the original and has definitely redefined cinema just like the original did. And as a result of Scream coming out, we still have a steady flow of horror coming out to this day. Although anymore it's remakes of foreign horror movies or remakes of old horror movies, which is kind of sad for someone like me who loves original horror. Now, if you love horror movies, love Scream, have anything to say about it, comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and of course, make sure you hit that bell icon so you can be notified next time Aaron Talks has another video uploaded. So, I'm Aaron, I've been talking, and I'll see you next time.